Writing a book is hard, and I haven't always been that great about having a good system and a good plan for how I'm going to write. And so this year, I've come up with a plan that I'm going to try to stick to, a little more of a system, and I'm going to share that with you now. So here's how I am going to write my books this year as a process and not just kind of a random bout of writing. So the first thing is weekly check-ins with my notes. So as I've talked about before, I always keep all of my notes in my Storybook Master Novelist Notion template, and I love it. It really works great, but I'm not always the best about checking in with it. The reason I created this template is because I have a large story that I want to tell. It has a lot of details, and so I ended up creating it so it could help me track all of it, because just a regular notebook wasn't cutting it. Scrivener and all these other things that I've used weren't cutting it. So I created Storybook Master Novelist to help me do that. The problem is I'm not always good about checking in with it, making sure that I'm going back through my notes before I write something, reading about maybe what I outlined. I do that, but I'm not the best at doing that regularly. So the first step is checking in with my notes regularly, going through them, reading through my outlines every time before I write, so I really know where I'm going and what I want to do with each particular writing session. Now, it would become a little cumbersome to try and read through my notes every single time I write. I might do that a little bit depending on how much time I have and what the day is like. However, I'm really aiming to check in with them at least weekly. Not really work on them, not really do anything other than just go over them. Maybe I'll do this on a Sunday before the week begins as I'm preparing my week. Maybe schedule some time sometime in the middle of the week, maybe to check in halfway through my writing sessions for that week. I'm not really sure yet exactly, but I'm definitely going to try to check in once a week and just kind of go over them, just read through them, read through my character sheets of who I'm writing that particular week or what chapters I'm in or anything like that, but just checking in with those notes weekly. The next thing is writing daily. Now, everyone says this, write every day, write every day, write every day. And it is kind of true. I kind of have gone back and forth with this particular piece of writing advice because you have to do what you have to do. So some days you can't write. It's just not possible. You just don't have the time. You don't have whatever. But this year, I'm really focusing on how can I work my writing sessions into my daily habits very, very consistently. For me, that's probably going to mean sometime in the morning, and that means I'm going to have to maybe shuffle off some other things that I would normally do in the morning so that I can get that writing done. But ultimately, if you're not writing every day or every other day or very, very regularly, you're never going to get the job done. And so it's very important to me that I make really good, strong strides this year with my writing. And the ultimate goal is that I want to be able to completely finish this rough draft of The Last House of the High People, which is the book that I'm working on right now. To do that, I'm going to have to write regularly, and I'm going to have to commit to that. And I've not always been good about that. Sometimes I write once a week. Sometimes I only get in once a month. Some days I write every day, but I have not been very consistent. And so this year I am working that into my morning routine, most likely, but sometimes at the evening routine, depending on what's going on. Obviously, there's going to be days where I can't, but I'm going to try to hit 90% of the days this year writing regularly. So along the lines of writing regularly and daily as much as possible, I'm not going to do what a lot of people do, which is set a word count goal for the day or set a word count goal for the week or whatever. I think that word count goals for a particular day are not a good idea. I don't think that they produce good results. I actually think that they end up making you more stressed out and more anxious, because what if you can't reach that? Every day and every time that you write, some days you're feeling more creative, some days you're not. Some days you just can crank out the words and you're flowing really well, and other days you can't. And so I feel like telling myself I'm getting 1,000 words or 2,000 words or whatever it is done every single day. Every time I've done that, it sets me up for just kind of anxious failure. And I don't want to do that this year. I've talked about this before on the channel, and I will keep talking about it because I just think it's the better way to go. I'm going for timed writing blocks. So, for instance, if I'm writing in the mornings and I'm going to write whenever I get up, I'm going to make some coffee and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write. I'm going to set a timer and write for that amount of time. So I'm going to tell myself I'm writing for 15 minutes every day. I'm writing for a half hour or an hour or whatever it's going to be. And I'm going to set a timer, set aside everything else, and I'm going to write for that amount of time. What does this mean? How does this help? Well, some days you're going to get a lot of words in. Some days you're going to get so many words in and you're just going to flow and it's going to be great. Other days you're not. But no matter what you do, whether you get 200 words or whether you get 1,500 words, you still completed the goal of writing and the goal of writing for that amount of time. You can always say, I'm going to write for a half hour and then write for a half hour. The amount of creativity that happens in that half hour can vary. What I have found is that even though it varies, I actually end up writing more. And I'm going to make a whole other video about why I think timed writing blocks are the best. This is just kind of a little bit of a preview for that. But truly, I believe over the course of a year, if you do timed writing blocks over a word count goal, you will end up writing way more words. Now, what I will say is word count goals aren't totally useless. I believe in having a word count goal for your whole entire book, maybe even for the chapter level. Like I want to have each chapter is going to be 3,000 words or 5,000 or whatever it is, pick the number that works for whatever you're doing. And I think that those are good because that gives you a nice gauge of how long things should be or what you're trying to aim for. But for your actual daily writing, I think it's really important to set yourself a timed goal because someday, again, as I've said a couple of times now, some days you have it, some days you don't. But no matter what, you can always complete the timed goal. And so you completed your writing for that day. It's kind of a psychological thing to help me feel accomplished regardless of the actual word count because I got the writing done. The next thing, which goes back to relating to checking on my notes regularly, is I am going to have a weekly or bi-weekly, like once every 2 weeks, maybe actual outlining session. So I'm going to put aside the writing and I'm going to do more outlining. I'm going to push the book forward. So for me, what this means is I actually have this whole first book pretty much outlined all the way. So what this means for me is outlining the rest of my stories that surround this particular book. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm kind of outlining this whole story all at once because I want it to be super well connected and well thought out. And so things that happen in other books might actually matter in this book. So to do that, what that means is I have to actually have the rest of the story written and pushed forward. And so as in an outline form. So while at the beginning of the week, I'm going to do just checking on my notes. I'm not really going to outline. I'm just going to read through what I already have and just kind of absorb it. I'm thinking by the end of the week, after I've done a whole week of writing and I have a bunch of fresh and new ideas and things that might have come up through those writing sessions, I'm going to go through and I'm going to enter those notes and I'm going to have an outlining session and actually push the story forward and add those things. Again, it's kind of a way for me to keep the ball rolling on this entire thing. So I'm going to be checking in with what I've already done. I'm going to write throughout the week, and then I'm going to kind of end the week with filling out my outline with all my new ideas. So then when I come back and check things the next time, I have new ideas to work through, new ideas to look at and absorb into my writing for the following week. And finally, the last thing I'm going to do is regularly rereading the things that I wrote. Now, this is common, I think, knowledge for a lot of people to do this, making sure that you go back and reread. Now, the important part of this, though, is that I'm not going to reread it to edit it. I'm going to reread it to remember what I wrote and keep myself fresh on the details, where I was going, keep myself fresh on what is happening in the story. Now, depending on the week, depending on the time I have, I might reread this. Maybe just part of the chapter. Maybe I'll reread a couple of chapters before, or maybe I'll reread the whole thing. I'm not really sure, but I'm definitely going to reread so that I can keep what I'm actually writing along with my notes fresh in my brain. Again, I want to stress, this is not for editing. I'm not going to do any kind of editing, and I'm not going to really be able to because I'm actually going to be I'm writing my stories in my notebooks and I'm handwriting them, as I've said in a couple other videos that you can check below and on the channel. So make sure to check those out to show you how I'm doing my notebooks. But I'm not actually going to be able to really edit because they are in a notebook. I think it's going to be a really nice way to just keep myself fresh on what I'm doing. What I will be doing, though, when I do that, well, I won't be editing. I'm going to take some notes, though. If I need to take some notes to add to the outline, whether I need to take some notes that kind of affect what I'm going to be writing next, I'm going to basically jot down any ideas I have while I'm rereading so that as I write, I kind of have a good basis of remembering what I've done before so that I can connect it all really well and have the story be incredibly cohesive and intriguing. all in all, it's a new year. I'm really thinking through how can I get this first draft of this book done this year. I'm taking a lot of steps to ensure that it happens, and I'm working those things into my routine and into what I'm doing. So thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, put something down below if you have any suggestions or ideas of ways that I can continue to optimize this process, things that you maybe do or I've heard other people do. Make sure to also check out, if you're interested in my template for Notion, that's called Storybook Master Novelist. There is a code WQ15 where you can get 15% off the purchase. Also, if you're interested in Scrivener, you can use the code QUEST at checkout. That's down below too, and you can get 20% off your purchase. So make sure to click that link down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Writing Quest. Huzzah!